Many of you have been asking me to talk a bit more about the challenges of moving to Australia, and I've already made a few videos about this topic, but I thought perhaps it'd be good to make an updated video about the challenges of migrating to Australia today. I personally migrated to Australia over 10 years ago. I know firsthand what is it like to be a migrant, to leave your family and friends behind and move to the other side of the world to start a new life. I first came here as a student to finish my bachelor degree in psychological science, and then I got my PR and Australian citizenship. But the whole journey was not easy, and I would have loved to have a video like this before migrating here so I could be mentally prepared for all the challenges coming ahead. Because you probably see on social media, on Instagram, these amazing places to travel around Australia, but not many people show you the challenges of the migration journey and what's going on behind the scenes. Now, disclaimer, as I always say in all my videos, each person's experience is subjective. The things I struggle with or what I don't like may not be an issue for you, and the other way around. Having said that, I hope this video gives you a bit of perspective and hopefully helps you emotionally prepare for what's coming ahead. So if you're interested, keep watching. Now, the first thing that you need to know about the migration process is that there is a settlement curve. I've already talked about the settlement curve in other videos, but let me explain very briefly. The settlement curve basically represents the different emotional stages you will go through when you migrate. The first stage is excitement, the honeymoon stage. Before you travel and immediately after you arrive in the country, you'll be super excited and optimistic. I remember my first month in Australia. I would walk around and take photos and make videos of absolutely everything. I was behaving like a happy tourist. It was all rainbows and butterflies. But after the initial excitement wears off, you would go through the second and third stage, which may happen after 6 or 15 months of migrating. And here you'll have some kind of bad experience or culture shock that may lead to confusion, frustration, or homesickness. And it will make you wonder whether you want to stay or not. In my case, it happened when I was studying at university and I was really struggling to make good friends. I was struggling to make that group of friends that I had back in Argentina, where I'm originally from. So that was the first challenge. I started to get homesick, missing my friends and missing my family. And then suddenly I started thinking, oh, perhaps this is not the place for me. I wasn't feeling that I belonged. So you'll go through many ups and downs. And as I always say, migrating can be a roller coaster of emotions. Personally speaking, at that point in the settlement curve, I was feeling pretty stuck and I didn't really know what to do and how to handle these feelings. At some point, I thought that perhaps there was something wrong with me, or I was feeling even guilty about having these feelings. And what really helped me during that time, and even sometimes now, was talking to a therapist. Just having someone neutral to talk to and someone who's trained to listen and someone who can actually help you and give you the tools to make sense of all these emotions that you're experiencing and show you simple ways on how to deal with all these changes. This is something that I always say in my videos. Look after your mental health. Don't neglect it. And this is why this part of the video is supported by our paid partner, BetterHelp, which I think could be very helpful if you've been thinking about starting therapy. If you haven't heard, BetterHelp is an online platform where you can speak with a credentialed therapist from anywhere. You just fill out a quick questionnaire and they'll match you with someone. And if it doesn't feel like the right fit, you can switch anytime at no extra cost, no stress. They've got thousands of reviews and a solid rating on Trustpilot. So if you're in that part of the migration journey where things feel heavy, it might be worth a try. You can click the link in the description, betterhelp.com/livingsimplyus, and you'll get 10% off your first month of therapy. Now, after the second and third stage, the fourth stage comes in, and this is the adjustment phase. This is what I would call the stage of resilience. You've learned how to navigate this new environment, you now understand local customs and have established a routine. And this is when you decide to stay and make the most out of your time in this new country. So in my case, what I decided to do is to first accept that I wasn't going to have perhaps the same friend group that I used to have back in Argentina. I needed to accept as well that I'm in a country that's very different from a cultural point of view to what I was used to, and I decided to make the most out of it. So I started going to meetup groups to meet new people, and not necessarily Australians, but also other international students. I started doing sport. When I started working as well, I made a big effort to become friends with my colleagues, and today I can say that I have lots of friends here, really good friends. So basically I got out of my comfort zone. I accepted that I needed to adjust my expectations expectations, and I tried to make the most out of it. It wasn't easy, again, but you need to understand that feeling lonely, homesickness, they're completely normal when you're migrating. Now, the fifth stage is the adaptation and the settlement phase, which could happen even after 2 years of living here, or even more. This is when you've already kind of adjusted to your new life. Perhaps you found a good job, you've made friends, you feel this sense of belonging and familiarity, and finally you start feeling comfortable in your new country. So as I said, you start creating your routines and you start feeling this sense of belonging. Perhaps I can call Australia home. And again, it's not only in Australia, but it may happen anywhere you go to. Yeah, migration to any country is not easy. So the settlement curve is the first thing that I wish I had known before moving here, understanding that it's normal and it's actually a fact. This settlement curve actually happens to most of us migrants. Now, I want to say something. These feelings of homesickness may return. They don't go away 100%. Yeah, even after 10 years, sometimes I feel pretty homesick. I miss my family, or every time I go back to Argentina for a visit, I feel a bit blue. I feel a bit sad. So don't expect them to go away naturally. Perhaps you'll always have this feeling, but it gets easier. That's the good news. And luckily today we have lots of technologies as well. Something that I found very interesting is that distance with my family got me closer to them. Perhaps when I was living there, I wouldn't talk so much to my mom, and now I talk to my parents basically every week on the phone or via Messenger. And now every time I go back there, I really value my time with them. So it really lets you appreciate your relationships and the relationships you had there as well. Now, another thing that you should be very mindful of when you're migrating to Australia is that the migration process costs a lot of money. So you should be very careful when planning and budgeting for your trip. The first cost to keep in mind is visa fees. Applying for an Australian visa can be very costly, and you can expect to pay from a few $100s for a tourist or student visa and thousands of dollars for work or permanent visas. And if you're using a migration agent, you can expect to pay a few thousands of dollars as well. You can always do your own research, and you don't need a migration agent to apply. Of course, it makes things way easier, but you don't need it. You can do all the paperwork yourself. Now, moving expenses is another cost that you'll have to keep in mind. Flights to Australia are generally very expensive because of its geographical location. It's pretty far from everywhere else in the world. And getting temporary accommodation as well is another cost you have to take into account, whether it is an Airbnb for your first month staying in Australia while you look for a permanent place. So these are all things that you need to consider. Another potential extra cost you may incur is shipping your furniture or your clothing. Sometimes, in my personal opinion, it's cheaper to get your furniture here, especially because there are so many discount stores here, or you can go to op shops and get secondhand furniture. You can check on Facebook Marketplace. Sometimes they give out free furniture. But if you want to know more about how to live cheap in Australia, I have a full video about that. I'll leave you the link down below. Now, another cost to take into account is your tuition fees if you're an international student. Tuition fees here in Australia usually start at $20,000 per academic year at university. So it's definitely not cheap. However, when you're a student here in Australia, you have the option to work part-time. And perhaps applying for a scholarship may also ease the financial burden of this, which is what I did. I got a scholarship for my bachelor degree, and then for my master's, I got the Commonwealth Supported Place, which was financial assistance as well. So there are lots of resources for you to explore and see if you can get some kind of financial aid to cover those tuition fees. Otherwise, you may have to pay for them, but be mindful that they can be very hefty. If you're not sure, you can also contact your university or institution directly to have a chat. And of course, living costs is one of the major things that you need to consider. For example, initial expenses such as rent, food, transportation, and other essentials. And again, these costs can be pretty high, especially if you're going to live in major cities. So you should make sure that you have a financial cushion to cover these expenses while you settle in and find employment. Australia can be a very expensive country. Cost of living is high, especially if you don't have employment. I have a full video about cost of living in Australia where we break down all the different expenses per month. I'll leave you the link below. Now, another harsh truth about moving to Australia is that getting a professional job or a job in your field is not easy. And unless your skills are in high demand, for example, you're a healthcare professional or a business analyst, many employers prefer to hire candidates with local experience and qualifications. Now, if you're a migrant, that doesn't mean that your overseas qualifications or your international experience is not valid, but you will need to put extra effort into your job application, especially if you want to stand out from the crowd. Another challenge in relation to working is getting a sponsorship. 10 years ago, it was way easier, but now there's been a few changes in terms of immigration policy. They've put in all these requirements that make it a bit harder. But if your skills are in high demand or if you have enough experience, then it shouldn't be that hard, because we still have a skill shortage here in Australia. We need jobs, we need to boost the economy, so migrants are required. And in relation to this, another challenge that I see many migrants face is the imposter syndrome challenge, in that many people come into Australia, especially if they come from different backgrounds or English is not their first language, may feel a lot of self-doubt and question their abilities, even if they are well qualified. And this can have a massive impact in their confidence when it comes to applying for jobs and interviews. I've seen people who have PhDs working in low-skill level jobs just because they think that their experience is not valid, which is insane to me. These people usually think that they don't have enough abilities, or perhaps their English is a barrier. And 100%, these are real constraints. But if you think that your English is not good, then go and practice, train yourself. There are so many resources today online for you to work on your communication skills, so that shouldn't be an excuse. Just go out there and try and apply, because you may get surprised, but don't conform. If you made the move, whatever the reason is, just make the effort and try to better yourself. Of course, you're going to have to start from zero, most likely, but embrace a disadvantage and work on yourself. Because if you have a PhD, clearly you have the capabilities and the intellectual capacity to go for higher jobs. So don't settle. Now, another massive challenge is culture shocks. A culture shock happens when you move to a new country that has a very different culture to yours, which can create feelings of discomfort or sadness. Some examples of culture shocks could include adjusting to different social norms. For example, people in Australia may behave, interact, and communicate differently to what you're used to, or they may have different eating habits or daily routines, or even the way healthcare, education, and transport work may be completely different. In my case, as I said, I'm originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and in my country, when you greet people, whether it is strangers or people at work, that is your colleagues, you greet them with a kiss on the cheek. But when you're here in Australia, that's a massive no-no. When you meet someone for the first time, you just say hi from a distance, or if you already know them, perhaps you give them a quick hug, but you wouldn't kiss them on the cheek. And that's something that we Argentinians or people from other countries have to get used to. I even have a friend who once came on the work and holiday visa. She went for an interview and she actually grabbed the person and went to give them a kiss, and the person was taken aback, of course, because it's a completely different cultural norm. So be very mindful of that, especially if you're super used to greeting people in that way. Or again, daily routines. For example, in Argentina, people have dinner between 8:30 and 10 p.m. Here in Australia, most of us have dinner at 6:30, 7, very, very early. So that's something that required a lot of adjustment. And it's funny because now when I go back to Argentina and I meet my friends, they are always, oh, let's meet up at 9 for dinner. And I'm already going to bed at that time. So that's funny. Now, if you want to know more about Australian culture and what is it like to live here from a cultural point of view, or even if you want to know about Australian workplace culture, I have lots of videos on this channel, again, for you to check out. All the links, you're going to find them below. Now, another big thing migrants struggle with when they first come to Australia is the accent and the slang, even if they speak English. I have friends who are native English speakers, and they still struggle with the Australian accent and the slang, which makes you feel a bit better as a non-native English speaker, because it's like, oh, okay, even native English speakers struggle with that. So for me personally, it was a massive challenge because I was used to the American accent. I used to watch Sabrina the Teenage Witch or Friends. So suddenly coming here, I had never had exposure to the Australian accent. It was hard to get used to that, but then over time, of course, you get used to it. And I know that many of you are always asking me for recommendations of Australian TV shows and films. I have a video about that, and all the TV shows that I recommend are mainly mainly comedies, but I think you're going to enjoy them, and you'll get a bit of exposure to not only the Australian accent and how they talk, but also to the Australian culture. And I also have a few videos on Australian slang that are pretty funny, and perhaps they might be of some help. Now, another challenge that you'll have to face as a migrant when you come here, and this is the harsh reality of what's happening today, perhaps it wasn't this way 10 years ago when I came here, is that renting and getting a house when you first move in is hard. So what I always recommend doing is that at the beginning, at least for your first weeks or first month here, is to rent an Airbnb or short-term accommodation. So that's one thing. And yeah, renting is pretty competitive. It can be a bit of a challenge because you'll have to show proof of income, and usually they require pay slips. But if you are new here, you're probably not going to have employment. So what I did was to provide overseas bank statements, basically showing that you have enough funds to cover rent, or offering to pay rent 6 months in advance. So those are little tactics that you can use to rent. If you want to know more about renting in Australia, I have a dedicated video about that. But please don't worry. Again, competition is mainly in inner suburbs. If you go to other areas, it gets a bit better. So yeah, that's something to take into account. Now, another challenge is the car-dependent culture. Yes, so if you're coming from a big city like me, I used to live in Buenos Aires, public transport was really good there, so we really didn't need a car. Many of my friends there don't drive because it's not really needed. So if you come here, that's something that you'll get used to, driving, because here basically everything is concentrated in the CBD, in the city, and then it's all spread out. You have suburbia, yeah, the suburbs, and most of us live in the suburbs or inner city suburbs. And still, if you want to go to the shops, or if you want to go to your friend's house, someone invites you over for dinner, you'll need a car most likely. Of course, you can take public transport, but commuting times are long. It will take you a long time. Or if you want to go outdoors, if you want to go camping, or you want to go on weekend trips, which is something super normal here, yeah, going on road trips, you'll most likely need a car. You have the option to rent as well, to hire a rental car. 100% that's an option. For example, when I used to live in South Yarra, inner city Melbourne, I would take trains everywhere, and we would just hire a car if we wanted to go on road trips. But again, once you move to suburbia, it's a must having a car. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. And that's one of the main challenges for people who perhaps are not used to driving all the time. Now, if you want to know more about what is it like to live, work, study, and travel here in Australia, watch these videos here and here. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe to keep supporting the channel so I can keep bringing more content for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.